Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. We're actually going to start. Tonight is a regularly scheduled meeting. It's actually not a regularly scheduled meeting. It's a specially scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee in order to hear these particular docket items. Let's see, let me introduce who's here first. I'm Andrea Kelly. I'm the chair of this committee. We have with us in the chamber from Ward 1, Councillor Allison Leary. From Ward 2, Tariq Lucas. I'm from Ward 3. From Ward 4, we have Councillor Randy Block. From Ward 6, we have Alan Lobovitz. From Ward 7, President Mark Laredo. And Stephen Farrell is not Martha Bixby tonight. From Ward 8, Stephen Farrell. We have some other councillors here who I'll introduce in a minute. With us here in the chamber are staff clerk Scott Matthews. Online, we have a couple of planning and law staff members. We have City Solicitor Jonah Temple, Director of Planning and Development Barney Heath, and Planner Kat Kemet. Here again in the chamber, we have Councillor John Oliver from Ward 1 and Councillor Maria Greenberg from Ward 1 and Councillor Susan Albright from Ward 2. And let's see if I'm missing anyone. Councillor Gentile online from Ward 4. So, as I was just saying to our clerk, the format and agenda and schedule for this meeting has changed every day in the past week, if not a few times within a day, which just happened again a few minutes ago. So I'm going to give a brief introduction and background to where we are and why we're here tonight. Then we are aiming to open up the public hearing. We are aiming to hear from the developer and the public and the land use committee and the city councilors. So we'll just see where things go from now. The background of this is a project that's been before us actually now for many years. There are two petitions. One is to change the zone for this site, and the other is to allow for a special permit. The public hearings have been closed as of the last meeting, and recommendations have been made to the full council. However, since then, some additional information has been received, which is why I think it's really important that we reopen the public hearing and all be able to hear an explanation of that new material and hear from the public and the city councilors about it. Two things changed. The applicant, there was a change in the ownership, which changes technically the wording of the owner on the docket items. We need to make sure that's correct, which I believe it is now. We'll talk more about that later. And there has been some financial data that was provided, that was requested and provided on the proposed project. The full council, when they voted on this, sent both items back to the committee for further discussion, which is why we're here tonight. After I consulted with the law department, many members of the law department, I understand that the change in ownership is a technical issue that has already been addressed through updating the applications online and the submission of an updated owner authorization form or forms by the current owner to the new owner who were in partnership before and who are still in partnership. And we can hear more about that later, but I just want to lay it out on the table. We can take a vote to update the docket language to reflect the new owner later tonight. In the meantime, what I want us to do is to hear from the petitioner who provided some financial information. I would like for them to explain some of that, and then we'll have a discussion about it. I would also like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing, which I believe the councillor from Ward 1 who has a hand up is ready to do, and that's the appropriate thing to do. Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to reopen the public hearing on this item,
On both items.
on both items, the
Which-
special permit and the project.
Great,
itself.
and I believe it is appropriate. We can do those both in one vote. Do you think we can do that as a voice vote? Great. All in favor of opening the public hearing on both items, both the zone change and the special permit of the Land Use Committee, please say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed to that? Are there any abstentions? Great, that passes. The public hearing is open again on this. I would now like to ask the developer or the petitioner or representative of the petitioner if you would like to come to that microphone and talk through the information that you provided recently. You can identify yourself again.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and other city councilors joining us this evening. My name is Matt Eckel. I'm an attorney with Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant. Joining us in person, we have John Mueller, one of the property owners, as well as Amanda Risch, also from Fletcher Tilton. And we also have Nicholas Bogine joining us remotely, the other owner of the property. I want to start out by thanking Chair Kelly and the committee for specially scheduling this hearing this evening and being flexible to accommodate the meeting. Our hope, as mentioned in Chair Kelly's opening, is to bring clarity to two main topics. The first, the current ownership of the property and the circumstances around that transfer. And second, the feasibility of the project. These topics have been the subject and discussion among the council as well as the community. And unfortunately, based on either speculation or misinformation, has created confusion, which has shifted the attention away from the actual merit of the proposal before the council and has opened up more questions than answers. Our hope is we can provide some additional information to clear up some of the rumors or allegations and reorient the focus back to the project itself. But first, I'd like to speak briefly to the transfer of the property. As the committee is aware, and has been stated on the record this evening, the property was transferred and the new ownership entity, as reflected in our applications, as well as the Registry of Deeds, is Newton Park Watertown Realty LLC. This entity represents the merging of Mr. Mueller and Mr. Bogine's interest into one new entity, which is designed to finally move this project forward. Our team apologizes for any confusion timing of this transaction created, and it was certainly an oversight not to mention this at our last hearing before the committee, which created procedural issues and questions surrounding who the actual applicant was and who could receive the relief requested. The timing of this transfer was obviously less than ideal, and it was necessitated by a number of reasons due to some of the delays in the process as we move through with the Land Use Committee and the community at large. Unfortunately, our first community meeting scheduled back in December was unsuccessful and only had one person attend due to some miscommunication and us unwisely relying on this distribution of the information of this meeting, which again led it to be an unsuccessful and unproductive meeting. This delayed us over a month as we led right into the holiday season, which obviously didn't allow meetings or hearings to take place. And then this committee schedule itself, which you did get us on as soon as possible, but obviously we had to wait until that appropriate time to come back before the committee. And finally, the deadline to close the loan was February 28th. Without that, which was supported by a personal guarantee by Nicholas Bogine, we wouldn't have had financing at all for any project, 10 units, 13 units, or anything. So it became necessary to close that to protect any sort of project in the future. Although the timing of this closing, again, was unfortunate, it was necessary to protect the project in some form and continue to move forward. Again, we regret this misstep, but at the same time, we actually believe the closing is a reflection of what we've been saying now for almost over a year. The project, unfortunately, was not moving forward with John alone. He is here tonight, and he has been here for the last 7 to 8 years trying to get this project off the ground. He has tried with past partners, and it has failed, and he has tried alone and has failed. He needed a partner, and this entity actually is the firmest reflection of this partnership moving forward. John and Nick are committed to this joint venture and the project despite its many challenges, which we've laid out before the committee and the community. And transferring the ownership rights to the joint entity echoes their commitment to the project, the partnership, and the project. Mr. Bogine has been a part of this project for the better part of a year, as mentioned. He has spoken with and met many of the councilors, He has been at these committee meetings. He has been engaging with the community. He has been a part of this project, and he remains a part of the project, as does Mr. Mueller. It feels as if this reflection of the partnership is being misconstrued as kind of a last-minute pivot. And I agree in terms of the entity and the procedural issues, it did create a problem. But this does reflect what we've been telling people all along, that this project required assistance, and closing on this loan and transferring the property into this joint venture and this new entity memorialized the partnership. And again, I just want to echo that one more time. This is an ongoing partnership. We've heard rumors from the community that Mr. Mueller got his money and ran. He is no longer a part of this project. That is blind speculation. That is misinformation. Mr. Mueller has not received any money for this project yet, and he won't until it's built. That's how the joint venture is developed. That's how the operating agreement was fashioned. So to say that he is not a part of this and he won and he's out of this is just a lie. And we've represented that to counselors now, to interested parties who have reached out, and the message is either not being received or not cared to be received. But Mr. Mueller is here tonight, and he is still very much a part of this project, and the fruits of the labor that he's put into this for the better part of a decade have not been fulfilled yet, and will not be without a project. Again, we truly do apologize for any confusion and delays this caused, and the procedural steps that had to be taken to update the applications and to clarify this for the record. But at the end of the day, we do think this had to occur based on the timing, and it does reflect the commitment to this moving forward. The second topic is the feasibility of the project. This has obviously received a lot of attention the last couple of weeks. I want to start out by reminding people that the 13-unit project that is before you was spoken about with the community and has been contemplated for the better part of a year. We've heard rumors now that this is a bait and switch from when we last appeared before you in September, October, which I believe on the record we stated before this committee that we anticipated coming back. Unfortunately, because of the VZOD pivot to the MU4, the timing got thrown off on this, and we had 2 tracks instead of the 1, which would have clarified things and had one proposal in front of this committee that would have been all comprehensive at that time. The reason this 13-unit project was contemplated was there were fears that the 10-unit would not pencil out. There are still those fears. The economic climate back in July was questionable at best. I would argue with the new administration, tariffs, cost of construction, it's only gotten worse in the last few months. When we appeared before you in September, it was to remove the below-grade parking. That was cost prohibitive. There was no project with the below-grade parking. We had to do that, and we had to protect that permit, which was set to expire in December. However, that action alone did not guarantee that this building would get built, which is why we've been upfront with everyone going back the better part of a year when we've spoken about our ultimate goals. We were also recently, as mentioned, asked to provide some financial information regarding the 2 proposals. Although this is always a slippery slope and something that we thought might lead us to where we are right now, we provided some figures in good faith. Unfortunately, this information was then taken and selectively distributed, and people began to blindly speculate again about if these numbers made sense or not, without giving consideration to a number of unique factors that this project has faced, or perhaps not caring to consider those factors. And despite all the dialogue that we've had on this project, both in the community and before the council and the committee, I think it's been acknowledged by almost everyone that it is a unique situation. It's an 8-year-old project. It's a hole in the ground. There's been many starts and stops. There's been many resources poured into this, and there's been many changes to the project, which this committee and the full council has examined again and again. And we are grateful for that. But this truly is the result of an 8-year odyssey and a lot of distinct challenges within the project. We were told these numbers must be wrong. The profit's too small. However, the statement completely overlooks numerous factors, such as the rise of construction costs, and that this partnership was developed to get a stalled project, a project that had no chance of moving forward alone, by itself, moving it forward. It also ignores some of the benefits that we thought this project would bring to the community and the city of Newton. Excuse me. I've not heard anyone's analysis of the criticism of the figures anything about the extra affordable unit. The voluntary affordable unit, which represents a loss of about $500,000. If it was a market rate unit, we'd probably have it somewhere around $700,000 like the comparable units within the information we provided. An affordable unit in the city of Newton at this level would be somewhere in the vicinity of $190,000 to $210,000. So it's easy to criticize someone's profit and say, this seems like it's not enough of a profit. This must be made up. This must be make-believe. No one would undertake this project if this was your netted results at the end of all your labor and investment into this property. But simply ignores that $500,000, which again was part of a community package to make this a better project overall. 2 more moderately sized market rate units and 1 more moderately sized affordable unit. Unfortunately, this is the type of speculation or misguided analysis, whether intentional or not, which has shifted the conversation away from the merits of the proposal. A proposal, I may add, which would result in a building that many of the councilors sitting here today have either stated on the record or in private conversations, it's a great looking building. It's a great project. 3 extra units would be great. It doesn't look like there's any negative detriments to the community. They're tucked away, they're designed well. We've heard that from the community as well, as we've been recently threatened with future impending lawsuits over this project. We've been told we don't have a problem with the building. It's the zone change. We understand that, but it's certainly frustrating. We have a nice project that provides benefits. We have been open and upfront about it, despite the rumors and misinformation behind the scenes. As mentioned, we've been threatened with lawsuits, referendums, and even the picketing of John's Barbershop. But those same people have also admitted it's a good project. So I want to thank the committee again for your ongoing consideration of the project. As a team, we understand the level of commitment and maybe too much devotion of time to this project. But we think it's important, and we thank you for your analysis and your open-mindedness. In the interest of time this evening, I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. Bogin, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but is joining us remotely if he can be unmuted. I don't know if he has to do that himself. He can walk you through some of the additional information relating to the financial information, as well as the ongoing partnership. And after that, we'd be happy to take any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Eckel. Mr. Bogin, you can unmute.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt. I apologize I couldn't be there this evening, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you who have so kindly made an effort to be there this evening. Council, community members, and NNA representatives, as you know, my name is Nicholas Bogin. I appreciate, again, that the committee has made time for the special meeting tonight. And while my attorney has walked you through a number of the issues with true and accurate information, I think it's important that you hear from me as well. I'll be driving this development through completion, whatever that may look like, and with my joint partner, John Mula. I will keep this as brief as possible, as I've promised, and I want to use this opportunity to clear the air out of respect for what we call the public hearing process, which to me as a developer is everything. It's all about the process and the purity of the process. It's been a long road since I met John Mula about a year ago. We were connected through mutual realtor contacts, and I was asked to find an appropriate path to build at 386 Watertown Street. I'm intimately familiar with zoning in and around Boston, and I've been involved in hundreds of these scenarios. What has always been great about John Mula is that he's a classic old school non-anthem fellow. He's casual in conversation, but man, he's so passionate about this community. He's been a part of it for over 50 years. Anyway, I explained to him that the underground parking that he originally had, committee approved, was nice in theory, but it wasn't ever actually viable. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $750,000 in cost, and simply put, a project this small could not support such a cost for parking. We got to some reasonable terms with the hope and assumption that we would find a way to work with the community to get to 13 units, including affordable units, for which we've been talking all about for almost a year. From there, we were met with significant support and frankly, optimism. I really did feel supported. We received a lot of assistance from members of this committee and the community, and we believe this project, which added minimal but much needed density, including an extra affordable unit, without apparent detriments to the community, could be a win-win. And although there was some pushback and fear mongering about what will happen next if this were approved, it seemed there was at least a level of professionalism and respect for the discourse and the process. Then suddenly everything changed after the loan closed. Emails and social media posts misrepresenting the facts, allegations that John Mula walked away with the $1.5 million with no opportunity to refute them, claims that I was the only person in control or with ownership of the development, all of it completely untrue. And as Attorney Eckel has explained all of this tonight, this is a joint venture. And I am here on the public record to confirm that Mr. Mula doesn't receive a penny until the development's been completed. That's not really a secret. That's how joint ventures work. As we've already also explained, and Attorney Risch, our transactional attorney, is here to confirm, I'm the only one with a personal guarantee on the line. No one else. And just because I'm the listed manager of record on the Secretary of State, that does not mean Mr. Mula is not involved. That's just how the org chart is typically structured for JVs. In any event, I want to walk through 5 specific points which have been raised by social media and local news articles, and respectfully are misguided and dangerous to our public hearing process, which I, as a developer, hold to be the most sacred of processes. These misstatements should not serve the basis for this committee or any committee's decision-making process. Number 1, these are just greedy developers that want to squeeze profits. This project isn't great by all accounts and by the financials you've all seen. This was really me excited to take on a project in Nonantum. Yeah, make a little bit of money and take on the challenge. But Mr. Mula had other partners over the last 7 years, and they couldn't help him get it done. So I really believed I would be the person that could make it happen. Now I'm in a position, ironically, where the community has been divided due to a small number of actors who have spread false information. You will recall at the very outset of this process, approximately 8 to 10 months ago, emails were circulating, accusing me of being a slumlord, right? Someone I just have no ties to whatsoever. It turned out that the accusers mixed up names on the Secretary of State, and it wasn't me. Despite being made aware of this mistake and mischaracterization of who I was, these false statements were repeated in email chains, at community meetings, and these very land use meetings. They have done the same again and again and again, but this time by simply downloading a deed and drawing inaccurate inferences about the deal structure. Again, Mr. Mula has not walked away and has not received a dime, but yet the story prevails. Number 2, these are out-of-town developers who want to ruin our community. These are all quotes, by the way. It's really not fair to depict me as an out-of-towner. I'm born and raised in Rhode Island. All of my development projects are in the greater Boston area. I regularly travel and stay in Boston, and I'm moving back to Boston permanently very shortly. In fact, I was planning to live in one of the units at this new development on Watertown Street. And yes, before anyone asks or starts any speculation, it was a part of the JV operating agreement. So the fact that I'm looking to live in one of the units that is being developed should be another indicator of my commitment to this community. Number 3, John sold out and received $1.5 million. Utter fabrication. There's really no other words for it. John agreed that I may share this, as you guys have heard now multiple times, but I want to make sure the record is straight that John hasn't received anything yet. Not a single penny. It's just how a JV works for this size and scope. The developer comes in, the land trades hands, sometimes with debt, sometimes not. The land is quote unquote donated to the JV entity and is assigned a value. That's reflected on the PNS that you guys all have seen. And the JV is governed by what I believe is a super unnecessarily long document called an operating agreement. That document is private and confidential. It says who gets what, how much, when, who's responsible for what, when, and what happens when/if things go sideways, frankly. The JV really should not be a part of the zoning and permitting process, but because of these social media posts and email chains, it has been, and it's been inappropriately put into the spotlight, and it's really tainted this sacred process. And nevertheless, Mr. Rula can confirm you as well that he has not yet received any funds and will not until the end of construction. Number 4, the financials said the loan payoff was $2 million, but the PNS said it was $1.5 million. These developers are evil liars. Nasty quotes. This was another misrepresentation dumped on this committee. Again, not that it's relevant for zoning and permitting by any means. The land is assigned a value of $1.5 million per what we just covered with the JV agreement and the PNS. Donated to the JV by the PNS, but in real life money, $750,000 actually traded hands. The other $750,000 is basically an IOU written on a napkin. For the $750,000 that actually traded hands, about $500,000 of that went to pay off John's previous mortgage, which he'd been holding on to for God knows how long. I think it's about 7 years. $100,000 went to realtor fees and closing expenses. And the other $150,000, so we have 750 minus 500 minus 100. The other $150,000 went to John's former partner to partially pay back his soft costs. So again, unfortunately, John received nothing. Last but not least, they have $5,079,000 for the 10 units. They can just build that. As you all know, and you see every day when you open your phones, the world has changed after this loan was approved many months ago. We were required to close on or before February 28th of 2025, contractually with the bank. After the election, there was significant tariffs and extreme price gouging on construction costs. The basis on this project has really changed for the worse. And if you do simple math and you take the $5,079,000 that's being flaunted around, less the $2 million that we discussed with the payoff as part of the JV agreement and the equities and everything else, you're left with $3,079,000 for construction. Everyone in this room has seen the plans for the 10 units. It's about 14,000 square feet. If you divide the $3,079,000 by 14,000 square feet, you're left with $220 per square foot to build the site. In today's market, with the rising rates and tariffs, again, after this loan was approved and couldn't be extended, there is no feasible method to develop the units and actually make any profit. No one can perform responsible construction at the level of quality that this community enjoys and desires for $220 per square foot. So here we are. Mr. Mula and I just wanted to develop this site into a beautiful project. We felt we had momentum and support, and despite some varying opinions of our requests in the ultimate project, we believed in the process and the process that we had gone through so many times before. And then at the 11th hour, we've been met with false news articles and social media posts. And really, it saddens me that a public permitting process put in the Land Use Committee and City Council's hand to determine on a case-by-case basis the appropriateness of a project has now turned into a process with off-the-record, behind-the-scenes speculation, selective distribution of materials, as well as a social media campaign riddled with unsubstantiated assumptions or outright misrepresentations, and threats of lawsuits and referendums, or even the boycotting and picketing of an established neighborhood small business, is all things that something our opposition claims to be fighting for. I'm appreciative deeply to those of you who have dedicated a substantial amount of time and effort to this process. And you've kept an open mind about our vision for the project. But unfortunately, despite all the efforts and process this project has gone through over 7 years, I feel the unusual requests that were made of us recently and the blind speculation and misinformation about what it all means have tainted what started out as a thoughtful and collaborative discussion about what an appropriate use is at this site. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and to the extent there are any further questions regarding the transaction itself, the underlying entities, or the JV structure, Amanda Risch of Fletcher Tilton is here to confirm accurate answers for this committee. And with that, I will close out the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bogine. Well, the petitioner has tried to answer the questions. We're going to move into the public comment part of this meeting. I will say that I encourage each speaker, preferably who has not spoken on the same topic you plan to speak on tonight. You don't need to repeat yourselves. We've heard you. We've received your emails, but if you have something new to say that addresses the new information that has come before us, please speak. We're going to use the 3-minute timer that will be visible on the board. And in fairness to everybody, I'm going to apply that 3 minutes consistently to everybody. I ask you to weigh the petition on its merits, to consider the appropriate land use of the site. If there are questions, we have the petitioners here, we have the planning director, we have the law department in order to answer some of those things. So I'd also like to welcome Councilors Lipoff and Getz, who have joined us online, and Councilor Maliki. Thank you for joining us. So as I did last time, I would be happy to hear from people in the chamber. If you'd like to stand up by the microphone, and if you're online and you'd like to speak, please raise your virtual hand. I'll call on you. Try and pay attention to the 3 minutes. Try and say something new and pertinent to the new information. And we do want to hear from everybody. So anyone in the chamber like to come up and speak? Ms. Sorrow.
Good evening, Terry Sarrow from 44 Cook Street. I think we just got scolded. Sorry. I have been living in Nonantum all my life, as well as Mr. Mueller. I think I've outlived him in this community. We've also been called Nazis in a Klan, and I don't want to go there. And how can we trust, after having wrong addresses, saying one thing, and if you submit costs, you have nothing to hide. So I don't understand why that is a problem. And the mistrust that the community is feeling from not being heard is outrageous. I don't understand how the neighborhood can trust our city councilors to listen to what these people are saying. And what we're saying is, we support your building, but we do not want an MU4 to start President on Watertown Street. We don't want it. Build your building. And as far as picketing in front of the, I don't understand what that's about. And It's just, this has gone into wrong directions, mistrust to the community, lies, sorry, it's lies. We don't want an MU4 on Watertown Street to start a precedent. And that's what it's going to do unless you can say to us. And another thing is, as far as the VC2 in Nonantum taken out, and then we would work with the manufacturing around Nonantum. Now, you lied to us, because if you vote for this change in the zoning, you lied to us if you vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Is there someone else who'd like to come to the speak? Otherwise, I can alternate and go to someone on Zoom right now. So we're not wasting time. I'm going to go to someone on Zoom. Then Janine, you can come next. Sorry, I'm trying to move things quickly. Judy Rowe, then I'll come back to you. I'm just going to alternate. Judy Rowe?
Yeah, it's not Row, it's Bo.
Oh, sorry. My
That's
eyes.
okay. I've been a Newton resident since the age of 10, and I came from a neighborhood, for lack of a better term, Alston, where the real estate developers ate the neighborhood. So I'm very familiar with one building, then 6 stories, 12 stories, and what those development corps did to the neighborhood that I grew up in until I was 10 years old. I think if you've been on this project, Nick, for 7 years, then you ought to have learned a little bit more about the community, and you ought to have a better way to communicate with them, because I think for most of us in Nonantum, I don't really want to know how to run a JV or be a real estate developer, but what I can say from being a homeowner is construction never goes to the right budget, never stays on target, and it's never really the final result in the plan. And so we all know this, especially you. And since you're saying right now you don't feel like with the current tariffs and the current environment with the new election that you can even make this project work, why would you even start it? Because do we come back here when we've already said we don't want that zoning, and then you start it, and then there's 2 more stories you need to add because you could not contain or overrun the costs, and so therefore you still need to make that extra money? So no, as a resident, I vote no. And I just want to say on the record that I'm really disappointed that no matter how many times I email city councilors, I don't even get the respect that someone would respond and say, got it. I mean, that's the least you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bo. I apologize for the quality of my drugstore readers and not being able to see your proper last name. Thank you. Janine, come forward.
Hello, my name is Janine Stewart, and I live at 251 Adams Street in Nonantum. I'd like to speak to the councilors who have been advocating this project. You know who you are. If you've had a private meeting with the developer or with John Mueller, you should abstain from voting on this project. If you've had private meetings with Engine 6, you should abstain from voting on this project. Those private meetings are against the open meeting law. They are against your oath to be impartial. Nonantum is a unique part of Newton. Nonantum should be protected. It is the home of Newton City workers, the home of blue-collar workers, the home of people who provide the foundation of business, secretaries, store clerks, skilled tradesmen, and women, the home of independent entrepreneurs. Honor your promise you made during the VCOD debate to preserve our village center zoning. Please protect our village. Don't sell us out to Engine 6 and the developers who want to change our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Lisa Monahan.
Hi there, thank you. Lisa Monahan, 1105 Walnut Street, Newton Highlands. And I have spoken on this project before, so I won't repeat myself, but I just wanted to add a couple comments, and one is about the notion that MU4 zoning, sometimes referred to as spot zoning, is a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. It actually is quite a powerful thing, and it ensures that just this parcel alone will be addressed. It does not set a precedent for a neighborhood. I think that's misinformation that's been misconstrued. I'm in the construction industry, and I have been for almost 40 years. And I think this is a stand-up development team. You, these folks have been straightforward. They have a marvelous project. My biggest fear for Newton and for Nonantum, although I think our villages belong to everyone, is I fear not going forward with this project. If this project sinks and this hole is left unfilled, and this project needs to get sold, you will not find a better development team or a better building. I used to teach architectural design, and I can't imagine a better design for this site. The fourth floor is practically invisible. There's no parking that's visible. The special permit change, which is being requested, the 3 additional units bring no new cars. I don't think it gets better than this. And I think that the committee should embrace this project and vote it in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monahan. Anyone else in the chamber? Come up, sir.
Albert Chickenelli, 224 Chapel Street. Thank you for opening back up the public comment. Really appreciate our opportunity to speak. The reason we're here this evening is also one of the reasons I, Albert Chickenelli, am running for mayor. It is because very few at City Hall seem to care about protecting our middle-class villages or the people who live in them. Most of you seem more interested in helping developers make profit. This project is a typical example. Like Clinton Street, you take whatever the developer says at face value. You don't seem to check anything, and you disregard the concerns of the residents of the village. After securing a $5 million loan to build a 3-story, 10-unit building on a 9,400 square foot lot, the developer says it's not financially feasible. In addition to being ridiculous, financial feasibility is irrelevant, according to the city attorney. You voted 3 times already that this building should be 3 stories, 10 units. And it was just a year or so ago that the city council voted 23-1 to preserve the current zoning of the Nonantum Village Center. Now we're here discussing a zoning change for this spot in Nonantum. How are we to believe you when you say this will not happen to all of Nonantum, especially after Councilor Albright said she looked forward to voting for every MU4 project along this street in our last land use meeting? I'm here to ask you to keep your promise, protect our village, and deny these 2 items. I would also like to address personally Councilor Larry and all of the other councilors that said that the financial feasibility was one of the reasons that they wanted to go forward with this. In light of the city's legal department ruling that financial feasibility should not be considered, you should recuse yourself, not only from the voting, but from the discussion. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Chickenelli. Josh Bianchi?
Hi, it's Zach Bianchi.
Zach, again, I think I need new glasses.
That's fine.
These are cheap.
a Nonantum resident, 21 Emerald Street. I'll try to keep it brief. I think a lot of people have already touched on it, but the character of the Nonantum neighborhood has always been middle-class families. Since my great-grandfather moved to, here to Newton, 1903, from Italy, of course. But, as we all see, the housing costs have priced out young families and working class residents. So the next question has to be, how do you lower housing costs? And it's very simple. It's like a plain economic principle. If you increase the housing supply to meet the demand, it's a proven way to reduce costs. So I think it's a waste of time for, that we're talking about where the developers from, are they from California? Are they from Rhode Island? Is John Mula here? Is he not here? I don't understand why anybody cares about that. You've got a private landowner that wants to increase the supply of market rate housing, which will allow more families to live in Nonantum. I don't understand, how anybody could be against this. So, of course, myself and my family are very much in support of the MU4's rezoning. Anything to try to, get more people to live in Nonantum.
Thank you, Zach Bianchi. Anyone in the chamber? Come forward, thanks.
Good evening, Nancy Mazzapica, 46 Harding Street, West Newton, and I'm a wannabe Nonantum resident, if they'll have me. So 2 weeks ago, I spoke before this committee, and I suggested that Mr. Mueller take this very good deal of the 3-story, 10-unit condo development, which the Nonantum neighborhood graciously approved, and I said he should run with it. Well, run with it he did, without bothering to share with the community, or to the best of my knowledge, with the city council members, as he sat in these chambers with his attorney and management team, that he had sold the property for $1.5 million to his California partner the day before. This information was never disclosed. However, documents submitted by the petitioner to city council show the cost was actually $2 million. So the big question is, where is the remaining $500,000? Is anybody concerned that this deal looks questionable and suspicious? Is the $500,000 going to be distributed when the rest of the deal is delivered to the new owner for the new special permit for the 4-story, 13-unit development and the rezoning to MU4? Mr. Mueller sat with his attorney and his management team, who cried poor mouth about the financial implications if they did not receive this deal. Unbeknownst to all of us, they had been granted a $5 million construction loan on the original proposal, an existing permit for a 10-unit building with construction to start in March. The financial woes have been shared that this project could not move forward without the change in zoning and the new permit. This is disingenuous. Excuse me. No new construction loan would have been granted by a bank if the project at 10 units was not financially viable. It is beyond me how any committee member could vote to approve for these changes in light of the dirty politics which seem to be emanating, and the lack of transparency and accountability and the constant excuses for over 7 years. So now you have the opportunity to do the right thing. Listen to the community who lives here and will be impacted by this project, and deny the special permit and rezoning and move forward with the 10 condo development, which is ready to go and already approved, especially in light of the new disturbing information, which was not disclosed, but we are now aware of. We don't trust the developer or the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mazzapica. The next person I see, as you see, I've sort of switched to alternating between Zoom and in the chamber, is a phone number, 857-723-0131.
Yes, hello? Hello?
Just let us know your
Hi.
name, address.
Oh, yes, hi. Yes, hi. I'm calling from I'm representing the Cornally family on Lothrop Street. And I just wanted to say good points, Janine, Terry, Al Ciccanelli, and the woman who just called, Miss Marzapika. The people that had private meetings with the developer, I agree, Janine, they should not be able to vote. And also, they got the loan based on the 3 floors that they already had. So there's not going to be a hole in the ground. We got to just get that out of our head. That was their mistake that they made going 7 years now. It's their mistake. They've been approved. I mean, Al said everything wonderful. You guys had a 23-1 vote to, I forget now what he said exactly, but to agree, I forget, to not change the zoning, to not change the zoning. All right, so bear with me here. Okay, a developer's economic hardship is not an acceptable reason to grant a zone change and a special permit, okay? That is not a reason to change the zoning. That is very clear, okay? You all need to take all of this into consideration, what my neighbors have said, and I think you need to honor your commitment to the people of Nonantum during this VDOC debate, that you preserve the Nonantum Village zoning as it is currently held, and you deny this request to change zoning. Let me repeat that. The developers' economic hardship, which quote unquote economic hardship, I think we've already established that it's not a hardship. They all got a $5 million loan based on the 3 floors. Okay, so let's just stop it. However, it is, if they're claiming economic hardship, it's not an acceptable reason to change the zoning. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. Listen to what Janine and Terry and Al said, and Miss Marzapika. I mean, 3 floors, guys, just do it. There's enough of this. I mean, let's you have your loan, you have your 3 floors. How many more meetings do you have to go through? I mean, this is enough for our Nonantum neighborhood. I think you can understand that what they said. This is the middle. We want to preserve what we have. The people that live here, the traffic and extra stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, but I get very emotional. This is all. All right, let me just try to regroup myself here. The person's economic hardship is not an acceptable reason to grant a zoning change. Okay, even though they don't have an economic hardship, they got a loan based on the 3 floors.
Thank you very much.
And let's just go with it. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anyone in the chamber? Yes.
Thank you for reopening the public comments. My name is Margaret Ward in 957 Washington Street. I am here to talk about the VCOD initiative and how it relates to this special permit. In early 2021, the Zoning and Planning Committee launched the VCOD project as part of the city's overall zoning redesign. As you may recall, residents believed that the proposed changes were too drastic and they wanted it scaled back. They eventually expressed their discontent at the polls in November 2023. Following, there was a reconciliation and a final version of the VCOD was approved by the full city council shortly thereafter in early December. It is essential to note that this final version of the VCOD excluded the village of Nonantum for a very specific reason. Now we're hearing some talking points from public officials in various departments saying VCOD is unrelated to this special permit. This is MU4, it's entirely different. Oh, and by the way, this is not a spot zoning request, and please refrain from using that term. Give us a break. So let me refresh our memories. The objective of the VCOD initiative was to change the zoning in the village centers to incentivize redevelopment. And we were told this was needed to create more vibrancy in the village centers. Well, the residents of Nonantum said, hey, our village centers are already vibrant. Our local businesses here have been thriving for years. It was hard to deny this. So to protect their village center, community leaders in Nonantum came up with a creative solution and negotiated with the city. Their ask was, don't change the zoning code in our village center east of Adams Street, and in exchange, we'll offer a nearby manufacturing district to convert the zoning for residential housing. Councilor Oliver proposed this offer to ZAP as an amendment to the VCOD with much endorsement by his fellow Ward 1 councilors, Councilor Leary and Councilor Greenberg, and other committee members like Councilor Albright. It was unanimously approved by ZAP and then later approved by the full city council in the final version of the VCOD. So I thought I'd go down memory lane to remind you all of the agreement that the city of Newton made with the Nonantum community. And that agreement was to leave the zoning of their village center alone, keeping the height at the current limit of 3 stories. Approving the special permit to spot rezone to MU4 so that a developer can build 4 stories is breaking that promise to them. We've already seen this petitioner, Mula, renege on his agreement with this community. I truly hope that the city will not do the same. Please vote in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Lynn Weisberg.
Lynn Weisberg, I'm at 5 Alden Street. I spoke at the last land use hearing, and so I'm going to take the guidance from the chair of this committee to heart, unlike many of the previous speakers. There is nothing that has happened since this case was before land use, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, that should change any counselor's view of the legitimacy of the 2 amendments that are requested by the developer, the zone change and the changes to the terms of the special permit. You should follow the clear advice of your law department and consider only the criteria that are appropriate for your review. And if you do that, you will, as I asked the last time I spoke before you, you will vote in favor of this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Weisberg. Anyone else from the chamber? Come forward, please.
Hi, my name is Maria Camilli, 70 Albemarle Road.
All right,
I
can you
can't
speak
do-
into the microphone so we can hear you a little better?
Can you hear me? Maybe you don't want to hear me.
Maria Camilli?
Camilli, 70 Albemarle Road. I had to cross off my first paragraph because the gentleman explained that he answered my question. So I'll start with, if the developer had been more transparent and upfront from the beginning, assumptions would not have been made. These units are being sold as condos due to the current market values and the bidding wars going on with housing. These units will be sold for top dollars. The bidding on some homes have reached as much as $300,000 or above asking price. This developer will not lose any money on this project with the already permitted 10 units. There is no economic hardship. Economic hardship should not be a consideration in your decision-making. And the reason I repeat that, as it's been already spoken, is that certain councilors kept referring to this. The people whom I've heard speak in favor of adding a 4th floor don't live near the project, and they are not directly impacted. If there are any people who live in this village that are in favor of an MU4, most likely they are relatively new to the village and haven't had time to appreciate and recognize the vitality and strength of our village. If they have a need to bring New York City to Nonantum, then they should move to New York City. As decision makers, you have responsibility to the people of this village and to what the majority who live here want. You should not and cannot listen to the outsiders who don't have to suffer through the consequences. Ma'am, We don't want an MU4 in Nonantum. In 2023, the city made a decision that Nonantum would not be included in the MBTA rezoning. To go back on your word would cause much mistrust. I'd like to end with, Madam Chair, I like the way you run your meetings. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. My glasses work for that far. Back to Zoom, Suzanne Sankar.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Sankar. I live at 11 Phillips Lane in Newtonville, and I'm here to speak tonight in support of the Watertown Street development. I'm really urging you to not let the change in ownership derail this approval process. I urge you to simply approve the change in ownership and allow the rezoning and revised permit request to go to the council for a decision on the merits of the project. And I just want to remember what the merits are to remind people. This project provides more reasonably priced units for home ownership. It provides more sorely needed units to Newton's affordable housing stock, and it is a development in keeping with the neighboring properties. Also, I believe it will not open the floodgates for more four-story buildings on Watertown Street, since any structures with more than 3 stories would have to go through another special permit process. Also, I believe from what we know, this project is financially feasible. It has demonstrated that, and it can that by the fact that it can secure funding. As such, the minute details of the project financing should not be relevant to the permitting process. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sankar. Back to the chamber, Mr. Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before I begin, I sent out some material today. I brought copies in case someone doesn't have it because I wanted to review it. I've got the multiple listing sheet that I sent out and a copy of the deed and the mortgage.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Just for the record, could you speak into the microphone and give us your address? So many of us know you. It's just official.
My name is Peter Harrington. I reside at 157 Lowell Avenue in Newtonville. I'd like to go over the multiple listing sheet. I understand there's a lot of different information about this project. So I went and looked at the records. I suggest you turn to page 2 and you look at the bottom paragraph. You can see that on December 12, 2023, this project was listed for $2,500,000. You can see that on May 29th, 2024, it was reported that it was under agreement. That means that a purchase and sale agreement or some sort of contract had been signed to sell the property. And you can see that on February 27th, it was sold. Now, there had to be some information that went on before that. People had to know it. There had to be an application to the bank. The bank gave $5,078,000, and there's a copy of that in the package that I gave out to you. I understand that tonight you've been told that Mr. Mueller didn't receive any money. Maybe he didn't. It'd be very unusual. 60 years that I've been doing things like that, I've never heard of such a thing, but not to say that it's not possible. This application was filed in November of 24. And I understand that during the process, it's been changed. That seems to be a new thing now with the city. They make a mistake and they just change it. And I would like to say that when I looked at the application, I also looked at your meeting notice. And I see that your meeting notice says that this is a request to rezone the parcel to mixed use 4. And when I looked at the application, it said that the proposed zoning district was going to be Village Center 2. I don't know if they're the same districts or not. But anyway, the application is for one district and you're having a hearing on putting it in a different district. I don't think that's a good thing to end up with because it would create some serious legal problems.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Your time's up,
Time is up. All right.
but thank you for sending the materials also for us ahead of time.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Not right now. I will call on you. I see your hand up, but right now we're still in the public hearing part and I'm about to call on the next person on Zoom who is listed as Goldback. But I will get to you, Nick. We would all like some answers before we move into the committee work.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do we as a city value and want to preserve
Could I
the
stop you?
character?
Could you just
the tradi-
identify, could you identify?
Sorry, my name is Ann Goldbach. I live at 5 Whittier Road in Newtonville.
Thank you.
Do we as a city value and want to preserve the character, traditions, small businesses, and uniquenesses of Nonantum? Or do we cave to a developer's pressures to build a few more units of housing at any cost? The buildings in this vibrant area of Watertown Street are 1, 2, and 3 stories high. None are 4 stories tall. Nonantum is already the most densely populated village, according to our own city's website. It was intentionally excluded from the VCOD when it passed in December 2023. The proponents of the 4-story permit claim this has nothing to do with VCOD, that it's a one-off request. But we know there are building owners waiting in the wings to see what happens. If this permit were granted, it would forever damage the character of Nonantum. This project cannot be justified by asserting a need for more housing. There are already 630 new housing units being built at Dunstan East, Graff Street, and the former West Newton Armory site. Newton is an MBTA Communities Act city, requiring compliance with the act, the guidelines, and the implementation sheet. That sheet says that we should avoid spot zoning. Spot zoning can occur when one lot is singled out for different treatment under zoning from other surrounding land. Nowhere else in the vicinity of this property is there MU4 zoning. And in fact, it has been granted in Newton very few times. After hearing from Mr. Bogine and his description of the finances, I find it difficult to believe that the addition of a 4th story with 3 units would make or break this project financially. In arriving at a decision, the Land Use Committee should keep in mind the current zoning for this area, its distinctiveness, as well as the mandates and warnings of the MBTA Communities Act guidelines and implementation fact sheet. The committee should conclude that this request should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldbach. Back to the chamber.
Hello, Fran Urardi, Oak Ave, Newton, also a longtime Nonantum business owner.
How did I do?
I've been torn over this project, as I know many of you on the council have. On the one hand, I want to see John Mueller succeed and the hole in the ground be filled. On the other, I don't want a 4-story building in the heart of Nonantum, as I am not naive to think that it would be the last. This zoning change would set a precedent for others to follow, and the village center would surely have unintended consequences in the future. Unfortunately, given where we are as a city, I lack faith in our system. We have a planning department who would love nothing better than to modernize this old world village. We have a planning board that has recently said the quiet part out loud, that after this one spot, they want to see this zoning change implemented for the entire village. And we have a Ward 1 councillor who was so adamant about high-density development in the villages that she voted against the entire city council who wanted to preserve some villages in the historic 23-1 vote during zoning reform just a short time ago. So this creates a huge gap in the trust between the city hall and the people of Nonantum. Adding to that mistrust is a development team that, for whatever reason, has made a series of blunders, including recently calling the residents who opposed them Nazis, fudging the numbers they shared with the city council, not disclosing multi-million-dollar financial transactions involved in the property. Especially bad was when questioned by City Council President Laredo last meeting, they claimed that the 3-story development wasn't financially feasible, yet they failed to disclose to him that the $5 million construction loan commitment they had in their pocket to build the very same development. Let's be clear here. No bank would ever lend $5 million on a project that was not financially feasible. So they either fudge their numbers to the bank or to this city council. Probably both. Either way, that lack of candor is not something that builds confidence and trust. With the bank loan clearly in place, this is no longer a question of 4 stories or the hole in the ground. That claim has been proven false. This is now a question of, do we want to allow 3 stories like all the other buildings in the village center, and that it's how it's currently zoned, or 4 stories and then trust that nothing bad will happen in the future to this beloved village? The key word being trust. But the trust needed to convince the community that this development has their best interest at heart has failed to be built. If this zoning change is approved, Nonantum residents plan to collect the 2,600 signatures to put this issue on the ballot in November 2025 to let the voters decide. That will only lead
Thank
to,
you, Mr. Urardi.
that will only
Your
lead to
time
more
is up.
fighting, more mistrust, and a hole in the ground for much, much longer. I know you're torn over this decision.
Mr.
However,
Urardi,
as
your
elected
time is
officials,
up.
You need to
Mr.
recognize that it's not enough
Urardi.
to trust us. You need to build the support. Thank you.
Mary Lee Belleville. You can unmute. There you go. All set, Ms. Belleville? Yes, no? I can come back to you. Anyone else?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Sorry. Mary Lee Belleville, 136 Warren Street, Newton Center. I guess I come into this meeting with some questions that are more process related because, both the zoning request and the project came before the land use committee a couple weeks ago, and neither were recommended. I appreciate that some new information has come to fore, that it's been determined that this needs to come back to land use. But, I understand that regarding the questions around the project, but the questions around the zoning don't seem to be relevant. I mean, I'm not hearing anything that would suggest that this committee should have a great change of opinion about certainly the zoning, but also the project. So this feels like a little bit like a do-over, which doesn't seem appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you for the process question. And you're right. The reason we are here tonight is because new information did become available after the last public hearing closed, and we wanted to be able to give everyone a chance to address that. So we're moving on. Anyone in the chamber?
Carolyn Kraft, 295 Dudley Road. I'm here because I think I had the honor of being at the meeting in Nonantum a number of years ago when we were talking when we watched some of the council members come to talk to the residents of Nonantum. And they had, the way it came across is that they're coming into their town and telling them what was going to happen to the town, as opposed to what the people wanted. And that blew up in their faces to realize that it was for the people, not for the city. And what's happening here is that I've talked to people from Cambridge and Watertown, and all they're saying to us is don't let Newton turn into what has happened to us, because it's really terrible. And that's what you call metro building, where you just have builders come in and savage the town and do what they want. And then the people, the soul of the cities, of the villages, get destroyed. And this is what you have to think about. This is not about an MU. This is about, do you want to support the soul of your community, or do you want to just do what the law says? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kraft. Anyone else on Zoom of the public want to speak? Nick, I will definitely hear from you before we take it into committee. We want to give you and Mr. Eckel and perhaps Mr. Temple any chance to clarify things before we take it into committee. Yes, sir.
Name is Bob Kavanaugh, 69 Court Street in Newtonville.
You?
I simply want to address the fact that this stuff that, oh, if we keep building, we're going to bring down prices. We just have to build, build, build. Please, take a look at the assessor's database. Property values in my neighborhood have increased more than the mayor's, than Fran Godine of Engine 6, who lives on 21,000 square feet. So don't tell me it's going to bring down costs. That's hogwash. In fact, I have to actually compliment Bob Engler, some of you who know him. He sat in my house, told me my property values would go up if he built a 36-unit condo. And I pointed out to him, my property values go up, my taxes go up, and I have to raise my tenants' rent. So don't tell me that by building these things, you're going to make housing more affordable. It's going to go through the roof, but everybody can congratulate themselves because they're doing God's work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Back to Zoom, Robert Fizek.
Yeah, Robert Fizek, 47 Forest Street in Newton Highlands. Just an observation after watching a number of these events. I'm an architect myself, and I have been very chagrined at the way that planning and the planning has become co-opted by development. So we changed our planning department to planning and development. In Newton, it's mostly planning for development. That's not any, no one can argue that. Anyone who's observed what's going on in our city, that just has to be the fact. And what we continue to see, and this isn't fun at all. This doesn't have to be this way. Our planning people could, working with the city and the city residents, come up with the zoning appropriate for each village, each context, each scale, each environment, the limitations and the opportunities. Design your zoning to fit that all together now, and not spend your time always having to come back and circle back. Oh, well, this would be okay here, wouldn't it? And this endless process, because it's a dynamic process. It's a market. You guys can't possibly keep up with it, nor should you have to keep up with it. You should establish the rules and let the market respond to the rules accordingly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fizek. Anyone else in the chamber? No. I will then take it into committee, but before we do that, I would like to offer Mr. Bogine or Mr. Eckel or planning or law if they have any clarification of questions or points that were raised, and then we're going to take it into the committee. Mr. Bogine?
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and I definitely appreciate the community sharing feedback yet again this evening, as well as all of the committee and their time. I'm gonna make a couple of quick last remarks, and then I'd like to make a motion if you'll entertain it. And again, I want to really just tell everyone how grateful I am for your time in respect to the process this evening. I really do appreciate how much time and attention everyone has given this project and the process, especially tonight. It really does mean a lot to myself, the entire team, John Mula, and everyone who's really been involved to try to make this possible. I think one thing that none of us really had anticipated was for this to become as divisive as it has. I mean, you would think that we're talking about, a 500 or 800 unit project, and obviously there's a lot of passion in the community, and we love passionate communities. And like we've said before, we're excited to build something beautiful for a passionate community. But it seems, and I think tonight really solidified that, it's become quite obvious. You guys heard it. You guys just heard it a few moments ago, that even if we do achieve a favorable vote, we'd be met with some form of appeal, whether that's litigation or referendum. And at that point, I mean, what good is any of this for the community, right? And the site would be underutilized, it would stay undeveloped, and who knows how long it would result in unnecessarily delays and costs to everyone involved, and potentially even the city. And like we said from the start, we're committed to this neighborhood, and we want to work together in fulfilling the hole in the ground. And I really hope we can pursue all avenues to develop some building here. And I think we truly aren't sure now at this point what exact form that will take. Financial constraints, cost of construction are accurate in the fact that they've gone up. And the reality of the matter is, this is a really challenging time to develop. And we might need some modifications to be able to get to the finish line. But our commitment to this project is stronger than ever. And I remain firm that I want to see this project through the end, along with John Mula. Again, not sure what form that will take, but I think above all else, our message is that we really do want to unite the community and not divide it. And so, long-winded way of saying that we've gone in circles yet again, but we're obviously fully committed to seeing this project fruition in some way, shape, or form. But on behalf of myself, Mr. Mula, and the entire team, I would like to make a formal motion to request for a vote of withdrawal without prejudice for our applications relating to the MU4 zone change, as well as the special permit in connection with the 13 unit building. Like I said, we really do want to unite the community, not divide it. So I'd like to make a formal motion.
No need for applause, thanks. Mr. Bogine, it is actually not, you can't make a motion. You can request to withdraw without prejudice, and someone here could make that motion for you. Before we take that up, I see one other hand open while the public hearing is still open. KFP, would you like to say something now?
Yes, thank you. My name is Kristen. My maiden name's Franks. Grew up at 11 Maynard Street off of Craft Street, not too far from where the project is. I live on Cabot Street with my children, raising my family here. And I just, while it's out of parliamentary procedure, I do appreciate the applicant acknowledging that the community is quite upset and does not support this project right now. We at first, our family supported the Mulas, and I used to take my children to Salvi's to get their haircut. And honestly, over time, I realized that the economic climate and his intentions had changed. He had made comments that he would just sell to Starbucks if things didn't work out. So, of course, I have concerns about a new developer and partner from California. And, the gentleman that just spoke, I do appreciate, though, if you really are committed to our community, you joked that, or made a comment that it's not 500 or 800 units. Well, thank God, because that would take up all of Nonantum. But to go from 10 units to what you guys are proposing right now is just too much, and it would completely change the fabric of our neighborhood. And so I just hope that this committee will accept their withdrawal when it is presented properly.
Thank you very much. Gail Deegan, I see you put your hand up. Ms. Deegan?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Last call, yes, go ahead.
I have listened to these meetings and been at some in-person sessions, and I have talked with many counselors. I have been very concerned about housing in Newton for the 46 years I've been here. And I appreciate what John Mueller and the developer have offered tonight. But I think it is a sad statement about Newton and Newton's attractiveness to younger people, to people who work in this area, to our city employees, that what happened with this one project and what it was allowed to end state with people referring back to promises and innuendos and all of that. I think tonight's vote, if it is to withdraw this, is a black mark on the city of Newton, and it will be one that we will all pay a price. I can't imagine any small business owner wanting to do this. I can't imagine any developer wanting to come in and work within Newton. I listened last night to the ADU discussion and the parameters we're going to put around that. We are making a very big statement right now about housing affordability in Newton. And it is going to impact us, maybe not next year, maybe 5 years or 10 years, when we don't have the housing that we need to grow. And it's very sad. I love this city. I've been 46 years in here. And it makes me extremely sad to think that other young couples and families are not going to be able to live here. And I'm almost 80 years old. And you know, I hate to think what we're putting on to the people behind us, but I think this is a lot of talk has gone on, and I've learned a lot about the process, and I've learned a lot about the people. But it's a very sad day for Newton, and it is a black mark on our city, and we will see it, the implications of that coming right down the road. So thank you all for your intense interest in this, but as I see it, we're making a statement that's going to hurt us as a city. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Deegan. Greg Riebman. Oh,
Good
and
evening,
another hand.
Madam Chair and Committee. I just wanted to add my disappointment in this turn of events. This is a place that could have been home. These aren't units, these are homes for 13 individuals and families and customers for businesses up and down Watertown Street and across our city, and employees for our companies. And it's really disappointing that this has gotten stuck and bogged down in the pettiness that we've seen tonight. And I'm sorry and sad about that. And have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Riebman. Before we have a wake and a funeral, I would like us, because I'm not sure we're done with this, we're done with it perhaps for tonight. I'm going to look to the clerk and the law department for their recommendation on the best way to proceed with a request to withdraw on the floor without prejudice. What's the best way?
Chair, I can chime in if you like.
Thank you, Jonah. Go ahead.
Sure. So I would recommend that the committee still close both the public hearings and then can take a vote on whether or not to approve the motion to withdraw. And then the full council would thereafter vote on that withdrawal at the next meeting. And I would just ask that the petitioner's attorney submit that request in writing in between this meeting and the full council meeting.
Great, that's what I was thinking. I like it when I'm right, and I just didn't know. Thank you, Mr. Temple. I see the petitioner's attorney nodding that he will do the paperwork necessary, and Councillor Leary has her hand up, I believe, to make a motion about closing the public hearings.
You are correct, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, and when appropriate, I would be willing to make the motion of withdrawal without prejudice.
Thank you. Can we close them both together or do we have to vote on them separately? All right, we're going to vote on them separately and I think we'll just do roll call just to keep everything totally clean and by number. So the first one we'll do is we'll move to close the public hearing on item 480-24, which is the request to rezone the parcel. Go ahead.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo. Motion passes.
Great. 7-0. The next motion will be to close the public hearing on item number 481-24, which is the request to construct the building and the special permit. And we'll do that on roll call also.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The public hearings are closed, but I think hopefully this might come before us in another version at some point. And the next motion that Councilor Leary made is, did you make the motion or say you would make?
I said I would make the motion.
Make the motion,
so,
please.
I'd like to make a motion to withdraw without prejudice, special permit 480-24 for a zone change and for the project itself.
So we'll do these in 2 votes too. This is on the first one for the rezoning. Yes.
Chair,
Do you need,
I'd like to say something about this motion.
Sure, go ahead. Councilor Block, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On the motion
On this,
to accept the withdrawal without prejudice.
yes, it's the without prejudice portion. I'd like to ask you for your thoughts and perhaps the legal department, whether if we could consider changing that from without prejudice to with prejudice, whether that's within our jurisdiction and what the implications are. Thank you.
Interesting terminology. Councilor Laredo.
I think you'd have to have an amendment to the motion that would have to be approved by the committee. And I'd be happy to speak on that amendment if the motion is made. Thank you.
Well, Madam Chair, I'd like to make that motion that we alter this motion to without prejudice to with prejudice. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chair. Do you mind if I chime in for a minute?
Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the way this works is the petitioner can always withdraw with prejudice on their own. They don't need city council to vote to approve it. They can just say, we're withdrawing, it's with prejudice. That means there's a 2-year moratorium on them refiling. If they are requesting to withdraw without prejudice, that request needs to be voted on and approved by the council. In other words, they can only withdraw without prejudice if you approve it, if you allow them to. Since they have made a request to withdraw without prejudice, I think you do need to vote on that request.
We do need to vote on that request.
Yes, but
Go ahead. Let
it-
Councilor Block finish and then I'll go back to you,
just
President
it
Laredo.
seems to me that any motion is subject to amendment. That's what I'm offering.
It is, but the amendment hasn't been made and I'm going to guess that that's not a friendly amendment. So I'm guessing we're going to vote on that motion and then we may take an amendment depending on whether it passes or not. But let's hear from President Laredo.
So I appreciate Attorney Temple's statement regarding the difference between without prejudice and prejudice. Certainly, he's correct. This committee and the full council, if it chose, could vote to withdraw with prejudice. The developer, of course, could do that on his own at any time. If we're going to do it without prejudice, as Attorney Temple said, it requires a vote. I'll add that in my tenure on this committee, we always or virtually always allow withdrawals without prejudice for the reason that we don't know what the future is going to bring. And we don't know if we're going to see a somewhat different plan. Don't know if we're going to see something different. And there is no harm, in my view, to withdrawing without prejudice. I'll leave it at that because the motion has been made.
Thank you, President Laredo. That is exactly what I'm thinking too. Yes, Scott? Counselor Lipoff, former chair.
Yes, I will just agree with Counselor Laredo, and I see no reason to go down the path of keeping a hole in the ground for another 2 years. This developer would like a chance to figure this out, and they deserve that right. And I would hope that nobody would go down the path with prejudice. Thank you.
Do those comments answer your questions or clarify what some people may be thinking? I see you. I'm not done. I'm still talking to Counselor Block.
Thank you, Chair.
I want to make
am-
sure he's satisfied before we move on to someone else.
I am satisfied with the clarification. I'm just personally not convinced that it's a good idea for us to accept the developer's request to withdraw without prejudice. A lot of people have spent a lot of time on this, coming to whatever position they have. And for us as a body to say, well, it's okay. We'll just see you again whenever you feel like it and propose something all over again. There is an approved special permit for 10 units for 3 stories. Enough said. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't know if or when they'll come back, what it will look like. It doesn't mean it will be the same. It doesn't mean it will be approved. Just want to understand. I see your hand up. I'm going first to Counselor Oliver.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify. Does it impact their current special permit whether or not Counselor Block's amendment it is approved or not? Prejudice, without prejudice, that stays in place. That special permit is in place. This only impacts the 4th story and the extra 3 units. True, false?
And the request to rezone. Mr. Temple, is that correct? That's my understanding.
That is correct. This will
We are
not
just
impact in any
withdrawing
way.
these new requests, but the current petition, which has been approved, the special permit for the 10 units, if they want to go ahead with that, they're free to do that in the meantime.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Counselor Farrell.
Just let me be the dolt in the room here. What does with prejudice mean? I honestly don't know.
I'm going to. Mr. Temple, would you like to discuss or explain for us the difference between with and without prejudice?
Sure. With prejudice means they will not be allowed to refile the same petition for a 2-year period.
Thank you.
That's the difference. Any other questions before we vote on the motion that's before us now? Which is a motion by Counselor Leary to accept the petitioner's request to withdraw without prejudice. First, we're going to do it on the request to rezone.
Hold on, Chair, just to be clear. I did, through you to Counselor, have you made a motion to amend her motion?
I think I've been instructed that it wasn't in order. Am I correct with that, Chair?
You can do that. I have not said you cannot make a motion. I'm guessing that it's not a friendly amendment, in which case what I think we should do is vote on the motion first. And then if you would like, depending on where it goes, if you'd like to make an amendment, you can.
Well, I didn't expect my motion to be considered a friendly motion at all. So I'm just a little confused if that was a test. The motion before us was to accept without prejudice. I made a motion to change that to accept it with prejudice. If that is germane, if that is in order, then I would like to, then I did make that motion.
Okay. I'm sorry, I did misunderstand. You are making a motion to amend that motion, which we would vote on before going back to that motion. Counselor Laredo, you had your hand up, and then Counselor.
I want to speak to the motion from Counselor Block. I understand the motivation behind it. We've spent a considerable amount of time on this, and I think I'm hearing from Councilor Block that should be the end of it. However, I can't support this motion, and I'm going to urge my colleagues not to for at least several reasons. One, there's no harm in allowing this to be withdrawn without prejudice. It may never be filed again. We don't know. We don't know. It may come back in a very different form. Maybe it's not a motion to change the zone. Maybe it's just a motion to change the existing special permit. I don't know. But what I'd strongly suggest is we should not preclude, as we sit here today, the ability for any developer, not just this developer, any developer to come back with something different and I would hope improved, whatever way they see fit. And then, of course, we have the prerogative as a committee to accept or reject whatever's proposed. So I really see no harm in without prejudice. I don't think that hurts anybody. And I actually see a great deal of good in the without prejudice motion because it allows for future things that we can't possibly anticipate. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, President Laredo. Councillor Albright, followed by Farrell, followed by Lobovitz.
I'll just support what President Laredo just said. And if you don't want to accept the motion without prejudice, then vote against it. And if it fails, you can make another motion. But right now, that's the motion on the floor, and I totally support what President Laredo just said.
Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really about one aspect of the change in zoning aspect. And I believe we have another issue to decide before any developer goes into that section of Nonantum from Adams to Faxon Street along the street. We have something to decide about whether we're going to allow a change in zoning at all. So I don't want to encourage the developer to come back with another request for a change in zoning, which I'm not happy with. So I'm really caught here. I want to leave a developer to come and present us with something, but the big issue that this council approved a little over a year ago was that no zoning changes would be made in this section until the planning department did a study on the manufacturing area back there. And that planning, according to the minutes of the meetings, that planning was supposed to be done in about a year. And we didn't do anything about it as a council. And I just think that's really important. I don't want to waste the developer's time or anybody's time. But for somebody to come back in before we resolve this with the community, our commitment with the community, then I think it's a waste of time for a developer to come in and do a request for a zoning change again. Am I being clear at all? And
I think you are being clear, and I'm going to move on to Councillor Lobovitz in a minute, but I would like to respond to what you said. And as far as I understand it, what your concern is that we would not even consider any special permit request, which exactly does allow a request like this. I don't think we can say we will not entertain a special permit request for this site or for another one before we decide what we're going to do with that whole area. That's just my take on it. I can ask, do you need to follow up with that?
Just want to say clearly, I'm not saying someone can't come in with a special permit. It's only if it doesn't include a zoning change in that specific area.
No, I'm saying,
Okay, yeah, you're right.
okay.
All right.
Councillor Lobovitz.
Just a clarifying question. Are we voting without prejudice on both the zoning change and the special permit? Or can they be separated?
They are going to be separated. They are two different motions, but right now I would also like clarity from, because I was a little confused about what Counselor Block was trying to do. I made the mistake of thinking he was trying to make a friendly amendment when he was not. So what I understand now is we have two motions made. One is by Counselor Leary to accept the request to withdraw without prejudice, and then an amendment that was made by Counselor Block to accept with prejudice. It's my understanding that we should take the amendment first. Is that correct? We'll vote on Counselor Block's amendment first to accept with prejudice. We'll see where that goes, and we will go back and vote on the main motion. Yes, President Laredo.
You're 100% right, Chair Kelly, in terms of the order, but I do want to speak to my colleague from Ward 8. You have the absolute right, if this ever comes back before us, to say, I'm not voting in favor of any zone change whatsoever until we figure out what we do in Anantum. You're not giving up that right at all. All we're doing is preserving the right to come back. We don't know what that's going to look like. It may be a year and a half from now, and in 6 months, we have a plan for what we're going to do in Anantum. We just don't know. So we are preserving everyone's rights. And frankly, I think that's a more prudent course of action to just leave it open. We're not going forward with the petition as proposed currently, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Thank you,
Thank you.
President Laredo.
So I'm still confused.
I'm
Can I
coming
just-
back to Counselor Lobovitz. Counselor Farrell, I'm on Counselor Lobovitz now.
Oh, sorry. I'm still, I thought my question was answered, but now I feel like I'm not sure it was answered. What I'm asking is, the motion to withdraw without prejudice, is that cover both the zoning and the special permit?
Yes,
That's-
but we will vote them separately. First, we're going to take up the request to rezone, to withdraw that without prejudice. But before we take that up, we're going to take up Counselor Block's amendment to that that says withdraw with prejudice
On the zoning.
on the zoning.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I'm going to repeat it really clearly so we all know what it is we're voting on and which is a yay and which is a nay. Counselor Block.
Chair, just to clarify my own thoughts on this, I agree that we should always be open for special permit amendments. We have to be. That's our quasi judicial function. But the zoning issue is entirely different, and I think it's just very important that we realize that is what makes the special permit application allowed. Right now, the special permit isn't allowed by the current zone, and it's only when we change the zone that the special permit, as it's currently proposed, is something that we can consider. I think that I think it's actually a really good idea that we approve the withdrawal with prejudice for the zone, not for the special permit. I will vote to accept a withdrawal of the special permit without prejudice. I think that's entirely appropriate. I think the zone is a different matter, and I understand that the majority of the committee may not agree with me, but I think it's really important, and that's just underscoring the importance of it. Thank you.
Before I repeat what we're voting on, Counselor Lobovitz, did you still have a question to make? Counselor Farrell, were you putting your hand up again? It looked like you were.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, I appreciate the explanation that President Laredo shared with us through you, and I am satisfied that withdrawing without prejudice is appropriate. I just hope the notion that any developer listening to these hearings will say, probably not a good idea to come in with a zoning change, but I'm willing to go with without prejudice. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Farrell. Mr. Temple.
So I don't want to overly confuse things here for everyone, but the rules are a little different technically for the rezoning than for the special permit. in order for there to be a 2-year moratorium on the rezoning request, the city council needs to act unfavorably on the rezoning, which means it needs to actually deny the rezoning request for the 2-year moratorium to apply. Just simply allowing them to withdraw with prejudice, that wouldn't be an unfavorable act by the city council to create the 2-year moratorium as it would under the special permit.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that one. It hadn't been mentioned before, which might satisfy Councillor Block. So let me restate that if I'm correct, and so we all understand. It would be preferable to deny the request to rezone than to accept a withdrawal with or without prejudice. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Temple?
That's correct. If the goal is to create a 2-year moratorium for the rezoning, then you would want to do that through actually denying the rezoning request, not through any type of approval of a withdrawal.
Interesting. Mr. Eckel, do you have thoughts on this?
I'll be very brief and thank you. Our voluntary request to this council to withdraw without prejudice was an olive branch to the community. And certainly we had every intent to protect our rights. So if we're moving towards a motion to denial, then we may have to withdraw that request to withdraw. So we want to move forward with the request as we requested.
Okay.
And put an end to this and reevaluate. And as so well put by some of the counselors, leave the door open to relook at it, but we have no plans to do that right now. So.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to hear from you before we moved in a direction, just so that you would understand. Councilor President Laredo.
So look, I appreciate what Attorney Temple just said. I think I'm hearing that the will of this committee is to withdraw without prejudice. Let's vote on the motion that Councilor Block has made. If it's successful, other amendments are in order. If it's not successful, we vote on the original motion and we can proceed forward.
I agree. I think we're going to first vote on Councilor Block's motion to amend the motion to accept withdrawal with prejudice. That will be our first vote.
Just the zoning change.
Just on the zoning change. I will read the docket number so this can all get written into the record accurately.
Madam Chair, I'm
Do you want to
willing,
interrupt me right this second? Or do you want to wait till I finish what I'm saying? Thank you. Sorry to sound so concise, but I'd rather recognize you than have you just speak up. Thank you. What I think we're about to do, and then I will hear from Councilor Block if there's going to be a change, is on docket item number 480-24, which is a request to rezone a parcel. We've had a motion for an amendment by Councilor Block to accept a motion to withdraw with prejudice. It's my understanding that we'll vote on that first with a roll call vote. Before we do that, please say what you need to say.
given what Attorney Temple explained, I withdraw my amendment.
Okay, that is withdrawn. Councillor Leary, do you want to stick with your motion to accept the withdrawal without prejudice?
Yes, I would.
That's the one that we're going to vote on right now. Are we all clear? A yes means we accept petitioner's request to withdraw the request to rezone the parcel without prejudice, which gives them a window of time to come back if they choose. Let's do this on roll call.
Counselor Block?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Counselor Laredo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And we can all consider some of the input from Mr. Temple going forward into the future. The second motion that I believe Councillor Leary made or is about to make.
Yes, I had made, if I wasn't clearer, 481-24.
481-24, which is the request to construct the 4-story mixed-use building. The motion is to accept the request to withdraw without prejudice on that one as well. Let's vote.
Counselor Block?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Counselor Laredo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.